The figure of Jacobo Grinberg emerges as a bold explorer of consciousness and reality. Inspired by ancient philosophies and quantum mechanics, Grinberg challenges scientific conventions to reveal a fundamental truth: the distorted nature of our perception and the human potential to access deeper levels of consciousness. Jacobo Grinberg, a prominent academic at the National Autonomous University of Mexico and founder of the National Institute for the Study of Consciousness, dedicated his career to exploring the intersections between neuroscience, psychology, and shamanic practices. Influenced by great figures like Carl Jung, Grinberg adopted a critique of the scientific myth, arguing that our perceptions are conditioned by mental structures that distort reality. This multidisciplinary approach marked the beginning of a search to free the mind from these limitations and explore human consciousness in its purest form. Deeply interested in consciousness and perception, Jacobo was reading the newspapers one day when he noticed a name appearing repeatedly: Barbara Guerrero, known as Pachita. Pachita was a shaman famous for her supposed miraculous healings. Although Jacobo was truly skeptical, he could not ignore his scientific curiosity and decided to investigate more about Pachita, either confirm her abilities or to expose a possible fraud. With this intention, he packed a backpack with enough clothes for 3 days and embarked on a journey that would change his life and his research forever. Upon arriving, he heard a deep voice coming from Pachita's house. "Jacobo, hurry up, I've been waiting for you." Jacobo found this extremely strange, as he had not notified anyone he was coming. He met Pachita and was surprised to discover there was no fraud. He encountered a person who, without medical knowledge or tools, managed to heal and transplant organs and operate on hearts using her hands and a field knife to close the wounds. She simply passed her hands over the area and the wounds would heal. Jacobo saw Pachita extract diseased organs and materialize healthy ones in her hands, which he would place in the bodies of her patients. Jacobo was shocked, which led him to question everything he had learned and believed about the mind and reality. He not only wanted to understand what Pachita was doing, but also to scientifically substantiate it. So he dedicated himself to studying her mind. For Grinberg, science is not defined by its subject, but by its method. This is how the supposed 3 days turned into 2 years. Jacobo wanted what Pachita was doing to be replicated and repeated in different occasions and environments. His research with Pachita led him to believe that our mind participates in the creation of the world we perceive, something similar to what quantum physics has demonstrated with the double-slit experiment, where subparticles behave differently depending on whether they are observed or not. This suggests that the observer is not only a witness, but also a participant in what is observed. Jacobo's work with the healer led him to believe that she achieved the healing of her patients through the mind. Based on this, he developed his most ambitious theory, the Syntergy Theory. These traditions teach that reality is more complex and fluid than what we superficially perceive, inviting Grinberg to consider how these perspectives could enrich his understanding of lattice theory, which we will discuss shortly, and other underlying structures of the universe. This connection between quantum physics and ancient spiritual practices offered Grinberg tools to explore the interconnection between the human mind and cosmic reality. In his effort to understand these limitations, Grinberg suggested the existence of a lattice or energy grid that lies at the foundation of all the reality we perceive. According to Grinberg, this energy grid connects and organizes everything that exists in the universe. From his perspective, the lattice is not simply a physical structure, but rather a network or mesh of energy interconnection and information that organizes and sustains reality as we perceive it. Inspired by principles of quantum mechanics and Eastern mystical philosophies, Grinberg suggested that our limited perception of reality is the result of how our mind interprets and filters information through this lattice. The objects, the colors, the shapes, the textures. For Grinberg, freeing the mind from these cognitive filters is crucial for accessing a more authentic and direct understanding of reality. This involves not only the elimination of perceptual illusions, but also the opening to expanded states of consciousness, where we can directly tune into the lattice and perceive the fundamental truth behind phenomenal appearances. The scientists concluded that if we experience reality according to what our consciousness allows, it is possible that there are individuals with a much higher level of consciousness. These individuals would not only perceive this underlying structure of reality, but would also have the ability to actively influence it. According to Grinberg, The abilities of Pachita and other miraculous events and figures in history, like Buddha and Jesus Christ, can be explained by the possibility that these people had a superior level of consciousness. This would have allowed them not only to perceive a latent structure in reality, but also to actively influence it. The Syntergy Theory proposes that there is an underlying energy network known as the lattice that organizes and connects all reality. According to this theory, human consciousness interacts with this network by filtering and interpreting information to create our subjective experiences. From this perspective, the mind not only sees reality, but also actively constructs it from the fundamental information contained in the lattice. The Syntergy Theory also posits the existence of a synergetic field, a kind of matrix of information that allows for the instant transfer of experiences and information between individuals, challenging conventional laws of physics and opening up possibilities for phenomena such as telepathy and extrasensory perception. According to Jacobo's theory, the brain functions as a decoder that transforms the raw information from the lattice into the reality we experience. The lattice is an informational field underlying the universe and contains all the information about all things but lacks objective qualities or experiences. The human brain interacts with this field, interpreting and organizing the information to create our perceptions and conscious experiences. In this process, the brain filters and transforms the objective data of the lattice into the complex and rich experience of the reality we live, similar to how a decoder converts signals into understandable images and sounds. To better understand this theory, imagine you have a pile of Lego pieces without instructions. The brain takes those pieces and assembles them in a way we can understand. Here's the catch. We are not interacting with real objects, but with a version that our brain has built of those objects. It's as if we believe that the assembled structure of the ego is the true form of those pieces, forgetting that we were the ones who assembled them that way in the first place. In this context, the lattice provides the raw pieces of the ego, while the brain acts as the assembler, creating a coherent and understandable version of reality from this basic information. This perspective suggests that our perception of the world is not a direct representation of objective reality, but a construction elaborated by our brain from the lattice. This construction allows us to navigate and understand the world, but it also limits our perception to the interpretations that our brain is capable of creating. Let's recall the premise from The Little Monk. There is no physical spoon as such, only perception that our mind assembles. This misunderstanding leads us to believe that the constructed reality is independent of us, when according to Grinberg, we are the ones who generate it. However, the question arises, why, then, do we all experience reality in such a similar way? Grinberg argues that factors such as biology, evolution, and collective experiences program our brains similarly. This leads to a coherent interpretation of certain stimuli. For example, an apple presents itself to us as tasty, reflecting how our brain has evolved to process light and flavor in a specific way. Jacobo continues with his research and, to support his theory about the existence of the lattice, conducts an experiment based on another principle of quantum physics known as quantum entanglement. This phenomenon implies that two particles, or metaphorically two consciousnesses, after interacting, become entangled. This means that any change in one of them instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance or situation between them. One example of this is a recent experiment that reveals astonishing results. Two people interact for 20 minutes and are then separated into different rooms. They are asked to maintain the emotional connection established during the prior interaction, and electrodes are placed to record the electrical activity of their brains. Without them knowing, one of the two individuals is given a flash of light. The surprising part is that the brain of the other person, who did not receive the flash, shows an electrical response simultaneously, similar to that of the person who did receive it. This suggests the possibility of an unknown connection between the brains. These results challenge all known scientific laws and suggest that information does not travel through traditional means, but is communicated instantaneously through an intangible network. This phenomenon resembles Grinberg's lattice. He proposes that just as atoms can be entangled through quantum entanglement, human minds can also be connected through a similar network, allowing the instant transfer of information and experiences. This principle is a fundamental pillar of the Syntergy Theory and suggests that human consciousness may have a far greater reach than previously imagined. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergy Theory not only challenges scientific conventions, but also resonates with various spiritual and religious traditions. His proposal of a lattice or fundamental energy network that underlies all reality finds surprising parallels with ancient concepts present in Buddhism, Christianity, shamanism, and other mystical philosophies. In Buddhism, the notion of interdependence, or Pratityasamutpada, describes how all phenomena are interconnected and arise in dependence on other factors. This idea closely resembles Grinberg's lattice. Buddhists also speak of the field of consciousness in deep meditation, an experience of direct interconnection of all things. The Syntergy Theory suggests that through meditative practices and expanded states of consciousness, individuals can tune into the lattice and perceive this underlying interconnectedness. In Christianity, the idea that all human beings are connected through a divine mind, the nous or logos, echoes the Syntergy Theory, similar to how the Christian logos is seen as the divine word or reason that shapes and orders the universe. Furthermore, the miracles performed by figures such as Jesus Christ could be interpreted through the Syntergy Theory, which explain phenomena such as miraculous healing and other supernatural acts described in sacred texts. Shamanism, with its focus on connection to the spiritual world and nature, offers another parallel with the Syntergy Theory. Shamans practice techniques to access altered states of consciousness, where they interact with spirits and energies that organize reality. Grinberg, influenced by his experience with Pachita, observed how these practitioners were capable of performing healings and other extraordinary acts through their connection to deeper forces of reality. The lattice provides a theoretical framework for understanding how these shamans can access and manipulate this energy network to affect the physical world. In Hinduism, the concept of Maya refers to the illusion of perceived reality, an idea that resonates deeply with Grinberg's theory. According to Grinberg, our perceptions are conditioned and filtered by mental structures, creating a distorted version of reality. Spiritual practice in Hinduism seeks to free the mind from these illusions to attain true understanding of reality, or moksha. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergy Theory finds echoes and parallels in various spiritual and religious traditions around the world, from Buddhism and Hinduism to Christianity and shamanism. His proposal of a lattice or underlying energy network that organizes reality resonates with ancient concepts of interconnectedness, unity, and transcendence. By exploring these connections, Grinberg not only challenges the boundaries of science, but also builds a bridge between scientific research and ancient spiritual wisdom. His work suggests that to fully understand the nature of reality and consciousness, we must consider an integration of both scientific and spiritual perspectives, opening new possibilities for human development and the evolution of consciousness. As Jacobo Grinberg advances in his research and experiments, he faces increasing controversy within the scientific community. His theories, which challenge established conventions and propose new ways of understanding reality and consciousness, provoke both fascination and skepticism. Critics argue that his experiments lack scientific rigor and replicability, while his followers see him as a visionary ahead of his time. Grinberg's theories also face practical challenges, particularly in applying his ideas in clinical and therapeutic contexts. Although his studies on consciousness and healing have potential to revolutionize medicine, the lack of a clear and reproducible methodology limits their acceptance and widespread application. Despite these challenges, Grinberg remains committed to his vision, convinced that true understanding of the mind and reality requires an approach that transcends the limits of conventional science. Jacobo Grinberg's story takes an unexpected turn when he disappears without a trace. His disappearance sparks numerous theories and speculations, from government conspiracies to extraterrestrial abductions. The lack of concrete evidence and the enigmatic nature of his work fuel these rumors, turning his disappearance into one of the most intriguing mysteries of modern science. Grinberg's disappearance leaves a void in the field of consciousness research and raises unsettling questions about the fate of those who challenge established orthodoxies. While his absence is deeply felt, his legacy continues to inspire a new generation of researchers and thinkers. Despite his disappearance, Jacobo Grinberg's legacy endures through his writings, experiments, and the minds he has influenced. His ideas on the interconnectedness of consciousness and reality have left an indelible mark in various disciplines, from neuroscience to spirituality. Numerous researchers continue to explore and expand upon Grinberg's theories, seeking new ways to validate and apply his concepts in practice. His work inspires scientists and philosophers to question the boundaries of perception and reality, fostering an ongoing dialogue about the nature of the human mind. The Syntergy Theory, in particular, remains a vibrant and controversial area of study, with new research exploring its implications for physics, biology, and psychology.